Every skyscraper needs blueprints. Every successful blockbuster needs a director. And, every successful tech innovation, from global logistics networks like Amazon's fulfillment architecture to, say, the sophisticated IT backbone powering a major university campus, has something just as vital.
Right. Robust project management.
Exactly. And without mastering the art and science of specifically project stakeholder management, well, the world's most ambitious digital ideas can just collapse before they even launch.
That's a powerful way to put it because it really captures the stakes, doesn't it? When we talk about IT project management, we're essentially talking about turning these complex, sometimes messy ideas into tangible working systems.
Hmm.
And for those of you joining us today, perhaps specifically from the Dr. Sam Pack College of Business at Tarleton State University, or really anyone intensely curious about the leadership side of digital transformation.
Welcome, welcome. And today's deep dive focuses on what you called the final and maybe the most profoundly human of the project management knowledge areas, project stakeholder management.
That's the one. It's all about the people.
Okay, so let's unpack this. This whole area of study, it focuses on the genesis of project management, right? And its critical importance, I mean, really critical,
Yeah.
to improving the success rate of information technology projects.
Absolutely. And we're emphasizing the concepts, the techniques, and really pushing students, pushing you to apply these in real-world scenarios. Often that means working on a group project, maybe as the project manager, maybe as an active team member.
Getting your hands dirty.
Exactly. So our mission today, it's to equip you not just with definitions, textbook stuff, but with that high-level strategic thinking. That's what separates the technicians from the leaders.
Okay.
This whole analysis is designed to give you those strategic evaluation skills you need to, well, successfully manage a complex digital deployment. It helps you conduct the necessary research, manage those multiple, often tricky project phases that really define a career in IT leadership.
Yeah, this isn't just about reading a chapter. It's about maybe gaining some career insurance. If you want to be the professional who successfully navigates these complex digital transformations, the ones that actually stick and deliver value, this strategic understanding is, well, it's non-negotiable.
Couldn't agree more. And before we really jump into the methodology, just a quick ask to our listeners. If you're finding this useful, please do like, follow, share this deep dive. It helps others find it.
Definitely. And all the links, any supplementary resources we mentioned, they're all waiting for you in the description below. Check those out. All right, let's start with the basics then, because the terminology here, it seems fundamental, but I think it's often misunderstood. We hear stakeholders all the time. What exactly is the scope of a stakeholder in, say, a modern IT project environment?
Okay, fundamentally, a stakeholder is anyone involved in, affected by, or, and this is key, who can affect the project, the initiative, the policy, or even the organization itself.
So it's a wide net.
It's meant to be a wide net, wider than most people probably think at first. Yes, it absolutely includes the obvious figures, the project sponsors, the immediate IT dev team, core management, sure.
But the crucial part is who else it includes, right?
Precisely. It also includes, say, the end users whose daily workflow might get totally disrupted, regulatory bodies who might audit the system down the line, maintenance staff, the folks who have to keep it running long after the project team has moved on.
Even administrative assistants.
Absolutely. The assistant who controls the calendar of your key sponsor. Definitely a stakeholder. Or think bigger the community around a new data center. If your project involves major infrastructure or, environmental changes,
Wow.
the definition really forces you to think beyond the org chart, doesn't it? It pushes you into the realm of influence and impact, not just formal roles.
And in the IT context, this is just crucial because while, okay, other projects might build a physical road or something, IT projects inherently result in massive organizational procedural change. And here's that universal truth we have to face. Human beings, by default, we're kind of programmed to resist disruption. We don't like change much.
That is the core challenge right there. So many IT projects, and we could be talking millions, even billions of dollars in enterprise software or system integrations, they fail. And not because of technical coding flaws necessarily, because of human resistance, misaligned expectations, sometimes even active sabotage from a stakeholder group that felt neglected or ignored.
Ouch.
Yeah. So project managers who really excel at managing stakeholders, they're seen as strategic assets, leaders. Those who do a poor job, they become very unpopular very quickly. They find their projects just stalling, bogged down in political inertia, stakeholder support is literally the oxygen for project success.
It's fascinating how this has evolved within the standards, too. You mentioned for a long time the activities for managing people were often sort of buried under communications and the PMI standards.
Yeah.
Moving it to its own dedicated knowledge area, Project Stakeholder Management, that really shows how critical and, frankly, distinct this field has become.
And that shift reflects a really crucial strategic distinction. We have to be clear about the difference between stakeholder management and stakeholder engagement. They sound similar, but they're not the same.
Okay, break that down.
Management is the overall systematic process, the framework. It's the strategic planning, the organizing, monitoring, systematically guiding the whole political landscape of the project, if you will.
Okay, so management is the system, then engagement is the action within that system.
Exactly. Engagement is the component consisting of the specific, often highly personalized actions and activities. It's the listening, the interacting, the collaborating, holding workshops, making sure the stakeholders' perspectives are genuinely heard and continually considered.
So it's more active.
Much more active.
Yeah.
Engagement focuses on working with stakeholders, treating them like partners, not just broadcasting information to them as if they're passive recipients.
Huh.
The language itself, moving towards engagement, emphasizes this necessary, personalized, interactive approach.
Got it. So if management is our overall framework, the PMBOK gives us a systematic approach, right? It breaks down into 5 key sort of sequential processes. This is the scaffolding we need to understand.
That's our roadmap. And you can think of this roadmap generally as, say, 3 steps in planning, followed by 2 steps covering execution and monitoring.
Okay, step 1 is foundational. Identify stakeholders. This is the exhaustive census, the big list. We have to recognize all individuals, groups, organizations involved or potentially impacted. No stone unturned.
Right. Then comes stakeholder analysis. This is that critical middle step where we move beyond just listing names. We start assessing what really matters.
Yeah.
Their levels of interest, their potential influence, formal or informal, their specific expectations, what do they want out of this, and their likely impact, positive or negative.
And this analysis step, this is where tools like those power interest grids come in.
Indispensable. We'll get more into those.
Mm-hmm.
Then we structure our strategy with stakeholder engagement planning. This is where we create the actual blueprint, the plan of action.
That will interact.
Exactly. Designing the strategies. How often do we talk to this group? Who on the PM team handles that communication? And critically, how do we prioritize our limited time and resources across different, often competing stakeholder groups? You can't treat everyone the same.
Makes sense. Planning done, then we execute.
Then we move into execution with stakeholder engagement itself. This is the actual continuous work. Holding the meetings, addressing needs as they come up, resolving conflicts using something systematic like an issue log, and actively maintaining that support throughout the entire, often quite volatile project lifecycle. It's ongoing.
Okay, and finally, we close the loop.
We close the strategic loop with stakeholder monitoring and control. This isn't a one-time check. It's continuous, real-time evaluation. How effective are our strategies? Is our engagement actually moving the needle? Are attitudes changing? And we adjust our tactics immediately as the project environment and stakeholder attitudes inevitably shift. It cannot be a static checklist. Right, let's dive deeper into those first 2 planning steps, identification and analysis, because, honestly, this is where the truly strategic project manager invests the most upfront time. Why? To minimize future risk. A failure here almost guarantees problems down the line.
It really sounds like this phase is about quantifying risk before it even materializes. So why is going beyond just the obvious names on the org chart so essential?
Because the biggest threat to your project often comes from that individual or group you didn't even know could sink the project. Identifying the full spectrum helps in, well, multiple strategic ways. First, it lets you proactively cultivate support where you need it, and critically, avoid risks caused by lack of support, especially from those folks who might have significant, maybe hidden power.
I see. So instead of just being reactive later when someone throws up a roadblock, the PM is almost acting like a political scientist here, trying to forecast behavioral outcomes.
Precisely. That's a good way to put it. Second, it promotes inclusivity. And this is vital not just for ethical reasons, though that's important, but for ensuring the project's stability and long-term success.
How so?
We have to pay special attention to groups that might traditionally be marginalized, maybe women in certain tech fields, indigenous communities if there's land impact, youth, or even specific end-user groups within a large corporation who don't have a loud voice. We need to ensure their interests are protected, even if their internal voice isn't the loudest.
Because ignoring those voices can lead to what? Compliance issues, public backlash, maybe just poor adoption because it doesn't meet their needs.
All of the above.
Neat.
And the analysis helps us understand both the positive and the negative impacts the project might have on these groups. That lets us revise our approach early on, maybe enhance benefits, mitigate potential harm, and that saves massive amounts of money and headache later.
Okay, so to make sure we cast that wide net, we need clear, systematic criteria for identification. What are we looking for?
We need to find all individuals or groups who might be affected, think positively or negatively, directly or indirectly. Also, anyone who might directly affect the design, the implementation, or even the assessment of the system later on.
And interest counts too.
Absolutely. Remember, anyone who simply has an interest also counts, particularly those who bring specialized expert knowledge, even if they have zero formal power in the organization. Their insights could be gold.
So how do we physically find all these people? We know we can't just rely on the org chart, which, let's face it, often misses the real centers of influence. The sources talk about a participatory process for discovery. Sounds more active than just sending out a survey.
Oh, much more active. A consultative and participatory approach is pretty much mandatory for complex IT projects. We'd start by consulting experts that could be internal staff with deep history, academics who study the field, maybe NGOs, government agencies who have that crucial contextual knowledge about the domain or the user base.
Okay, experts first.
Then we can use self-selection mechanisms. Things like putting out calls via media announcements, internal company portals, basically inviting people to come forward. This tends to capture individuals who feel strongly enough, positively or negatively, to actually advocate for their views.
I really like the idea of asking other stakeholders.
Yeah.
That feels like classic networking, doesn't it? Asking the people you already know to suggest allies. But also, maybe more importantly, to suggest opposition. Or people who just see things completely differently.
Who do they argue with? Who are the blockers?
Exactly.
That technique yields absolute gold sometimes. It reveals that internal political map, the informal networks, that the formal charts never, ever show. And then, of course, we supplement all this human intelligence with foundational written records and population data.
Like what?
Org charts are still useful, HR directories, census data if it's a public project, maybe results from past surveys, reports from local authorities. This gives you demographic and structural information, which is crucial for segmenting your stakeholders and profiling the scope of impact.
Okay, so once we have the names, the list, we need to understand their profiles better. And you mentioned this profiling should be transparent and participatory, seeking to understand their relationship to the project on multiple dimensions.
Yes, exactly. We need a profile for each key stakeholder or group that captures several things. Their operational knowledge of the issues, do they actually know what they're talking about? Their existing relationship with the project, are they generally supportive, opposing, close to it, distant? What's the nature of the policy or project's effect on them? Positive, negative, direct, indirect?
And critically.
And critically, what is their perceived power and ability to either advance or hinder the project? This is huge. And finally, we can't ignore their practical capacity to participate. Are there language barriers, issues with IT literacy, physical disabilities? These directly impact how we plan to engage with them.
This brings us neatly to the analysis phase, mapping the landscape. This is where we take that raw list of profiles and turn it into something visual, something strategic, using specific tools.
Right. And the most common, probably most useful tool, particularly in business and IT contexts, is the power interest grid. You might also hear it called a stakeholder matrix. This is pure strategic resource allocation.
How does it work?
It maps power think influence, ability to impact the project usually on the vertical y-axis. And it maps interest, their level of concern, how much they're impacted on the horizontal x-axis. This simple 2x2 grid transforms that abstract analysis into a really clear engagement strategy by creating 4 distinct quadrants.
Okay, let's break down the strategy needed for each of those 4
And
quadrants.
to do it, starting in the top right quadrant, we have high power and high interest. These are your key players, maybe the executive sponsor, critical department heads, perhaps a major regulatory body. They must be managed closely.
What does that mean in practice?
It means they're vital for success. Your strategy here is to construct deeply collaborative working relationships, involve them in major decisions, ensure they remain an effective, well-informed coalition supporting the project. This quadrant demands the greatest allocation of the project manager's personal time and effort. High touch.
Got it. Top right, manage closely. What about top left?
Top left, we have high power but low interest. This is sometimes called the sleeping giant quadrant. These stakeholders can still severely affect outcomes, Think about maybe financial administrators who control budget strings, an otherwise uninterested CEO, maybe the company's general counsel.
Okay, powerful but not that engaged day to day.
Exactly. So they must be kept satisfied. Their low interest means they don't want constant detailed updates. They'll get annoyed. But their high power means if they are surprised or something irritates them, they can erect massive barriers seemingly out of nowhere.
So the strategy.
It's preventative monitoring. Engage specifically, briefly, strategically. Keep them informed enough to avoid conflict and maintain their passive approval, but don't overwhelm them. Keep them happy, essentially.
Keep satisfied. Okay. Moving down to the bottom right quadrant.
Down there we find low power, but high interest. These stakeholders are often highly concerned or highly affected by the project, but they lack formal power. Their interests still need constant protection. They must be kept informed.
Who might fall in here?
This could include marginalized groups we talked about, specific end users who are highly dependent on the system for their daily jobs, but have no management clout, maybe subject matter experts without positional authority. The strategy here involves ensuring transparency, using inclusive engagement methods, think user groups, detailed newsletters, Q&A sessions to prevent them from feeling ignored and potentially becoming resistant, even if their resistance isn't powerful on its own.
Keep informed. Makes sense. And the last one, bottom left.
Finally, bottom left, low power and low interest. For this group, limited engagement is generally needed. The strategy is simply to monitor them and keep them informed periodically through broad communications like a general project updates. They represent the lowest priority for your limited project resources. No need to overinvest here.
Monitor. Okay, so manage closely, keep satisfied, keep informed, and monitor. That grid really clarifies things.
It does. And to make it even more concrete, let's look at that solar PV incentive policy example from the source material. Think about how different groups map onto this grid.
Okay.
PV manufacturers who build the panels and the utility companies that have to manage the grid impact, they probably fall into that high power, high interest quadrant,
Yeah.
right? They are key actors, huge financial stakes. They must be managed closely.
Yeah.
Then you have, say, residential building owners. They might have medium influence, maybe through homeowner associations or lobbying, but they have high interest because they're the ones getting the financial payback from the incentives. They likely fall somewhere in the keep informed or maybe keep satisfied zone, depending on their collective influence.
And the average consumer.
The average consumer who isn't planning to invest in solar right now, probably low power, low interest,
Yeah.
minimal monitoring needed, maybe just general public awareness campaigns.
We can see this in big infrastructure IT projects too, like that plan mentioned to shift freight from road to rail between Mombasa and Nairobi in Kenya.
Yeah, that's a great example. The analysis there showed entities like the Kenya Railways Corporation, KRC,
Yeah.
obviously high interest and high influence, and also the large landowners along the proposed route. They were also high interest, high influence because of compensation issues and land use changes, straight into manage closely. They had to be deeply involved in planning deployment, timelines, compensation, everything.
But what about the passengers, the service users?
Right, if you look at the service users' passengers, the analysis put them as having low influence but maybe medium interest in potential service improvements or disruptions. That places them firmly in the keep informed zone. This mapping is vital because it tells you exactly where to spend your scarce leadership time and communication resources for maximum effect.
You can't treat everyone the same.
You absolutely can't.
Yeah.
One final tool worth just mentioning, maybe for certain types of projects, is the rainbow diagram. It's a visual alternative, less common maybe in pure IT, but it classifies stakeholders based on their influence versus how much they are affected by the project, often categorized as least, moderately, or most affected.
Where would that be useful?
It's particularly handy for things like environmental impact assessments or sustainable development projects. In that sustainability assessment example from Mexico, you might find that the future population generations not yet born is clearly most affected by environmental decisions made today, but they obviously have the least influence.
Wow.
That requires highly proactive, protective strategies from current stakeholders acting as proxies, strategies that really transcend immediate organizational power dynamics. It's a different way to frame responsibility.
So this whole rigorous process identification, deep profiling, strategic mapping, it's all the essential groundwork before you can even think about taking action. You just can't build a strong IT system without first knowing who's going to use it, who's going to fund it, who might love it, and frankly, who might try to actively sabotage it through subtle or not so subtle political maneuvering.
That's the landscape you need to navigate.
Right.
Exactly. Mapping gives you that strategic insight, that political landscape view. The next absolutely necessary step is building the concrete blueprint, the Stakeholder Engagement Plan, or SEP. Think of this written document as the official playbook, derived directly from your analysis.
And why is having this formal plan so important?
It's critical for a few reasons. It helps reduce political risk by making engagement intentional, not accidental. It helps secure social acceptance. People know how they'll be involved. And it clearly defines the who, what, and when of communication and interaction. It brings structure.
Okay, and within this planning phase, we introduce another specialized tool. This one moves beyond just power mapping for a gap analysis. It's the Stakeholder Engagement Assessment Matrix, or SEAM. Did I get that right?
You got it. SEAM. Think of the SEAM as a specialized diagnostic tool. It focuses solely on a stakeholder's current attitude or stance toward the project. And crucially, it compares that current attitude against the desired attitude that's necessary for the project to succeed.
How does it measure attitude?
It uses a simple but effective 5-level taxonomy to measure the current engagement level, C, against the desired engagement level, D. Those levels are typically unaware, resistant, neutral, supportive, and leading.
Unaware, resistant, neutral, supportive, leading. Okay, so this is where the rubber really meets the road, isn't it?
Absolutely. Let's take an example. Say we analyze a critical department head using the SEAM. We assess their current position, C, as neutral. They're not against the project, but they're not actively championing it either.
Okay.
But our analysis shows the project needs this specific person to be leading. D, they need to actively champion the change to their staff, secure resources, remove roadblocks. That gap from neutral C to leading D, that's a gap of 2 levels.
And that gap signals.
That gap identifies an immediate, measurable priority for intervention. It tells the project manager exactly where they need to focus their political capital and engagement efforts right now.
So that difference between C and D, the current and desired state, that becomes a strategic metric for allocating your leadership attention.
Precisely. If you find your executive sponsor is neutral C but needs to be leading D to get those critical budget approvals signed off, your engagement strategy shifts immediately. You move beyond just sending informational updates. You start focusing on high-level strategic mentoring, maybe co-ownership of key decisions, building that champion mindset.
And for users?
Same logic. If your analysis shows frontline users are currently resistant, maybe they hate the idea of the new system, but you need them to be at least supportive, D, before deployment for it to actually work, then your plan needs targeted, high-touch training, maybe pilot programs, direct involvement in usability testing, strategies designed specifically to move them from resistant to supportive.
So the SEAM turns that general awareness of political risk into a structured, measurable control mechanism. It really informs where you put your limited resources.
Exactly. It guides resource allocation effectively.
But let's face reality here. Even with the most elegant plans, the best SEAM analysis, IT projects always seem to encounter resistance, especially, like you said, when the change affects those deeply ingrained work habits. You mentioned users preferring familiar paper processes over a shiny new CRM system. Why is that resistance so persistent?
It really comes down to the human psychology of control, comfort, and perceived value.
Resistance is common because, well, people are used to their current business process. The old way, the familiar way, it's comfortable, it works for them, or at least they perceive it that way, even if it's inefficient for the organization as a whole.
So they're thinking, if it ain't broke, why are you spending all this money and disrupting my day to fix it?
That's often the underlying sentiment, yes. And business analysts, project managers, change managers, they need specialized strategies to deal with this. Strategies that focus on influence, remember, not formal authority, to overcome this natural inertia.
Okay, the source material gives us 5 pretty excellent strategies here, often used by successful change agents, to try and bridge that human gap. The first one sounds non-negotiable, especially for high-impact resistance. Build an individual relationship.
Absolutely non-negotiable. You rarely win over a significant resistor from across a big conference table or through emails. You have to invest personal time, build trust outside the immediate, maybe tense project context.
Maybe it's a shared coffee break, a quick, informal check-in about something unrelated, finding common ground. This personal investment humanizes you, makes you not just the project manager pushing this unwanted thing. It makes them less likely to immediately reject what you propose just out of hand.
Okay, build the relationship. Second strategy, understand their current business process deeply.
Yes. Don't just dismiss it or try to change it immediately. You need to become almost an anthropologist of their current workflow. Understand why that paper process feels easier or better to them. What hidden need is that old system serving. Maybe it gives them a sense of control. Maybe it allows for notes in the margin they find useful. These people are presumably high performers in their roles, so you need to respect the process that got them there before you can effectively help them transition away from it.
Understand the why. Got it. Third, and this feels like the pivot point, focus on their problems, not the project's problems, their problems.
This is huge. Stop selling the features and benefits of the new system from the project's perspective. Instead, identify their specific daily frustrations. What bugs them? Maybe they genuinely hate that they have to physically scan stacks of documents before traveling. Maybe they constantly miss important notifications with the current setup.
Find their pain point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you can identify their frustration, the thing they genuinely want fixed, and then show how the new system, perhaps with a small tweak or prioritization, can solve that specific problem for them, you gain immediate, powerful buy-in.
Can you give an example?
Sure. I saw a project manager successfully win over a really resistant sales team. The team hated the new mobile CRM interface. Instead of arguing, the PM listened, identified a nagging data entry issue that wasted their time technically slightly outside the original scope. Got it fixed quickly, and suddenly the team saw the system as helping them, not just management. It was purely a strategic move to gain allies.
Smart. Okay, strategy number 4 leverages social dynamics. Share wins.
Yes, the power of peer pressure and positive visibility.
Yeah.
Once you get a few early, hopefully voluntary, adopters on board, and they start seeing benefits, celebrate their success publicly, personally.
How would you do that?
Highlight tangible benefits. Things like, hey everyone, great news. Jane in accounting was able to leave early on Fridays last month because her new expense reporting process is so much easier. Or, quick update, the reduction in double entry errors since Team B started using the new module has already saved the department about 10 hours a week.
And you focus on the benefit that matters to the resistor.
Absolutely. Is it saving time? Is it getting recognition? Is it reducing stress? Tailor the message. Seeing their peers succeed can be a powerful motivator for the hesitant.
Okay, share wins. And finally, strategy 5, the sometimes necessary escalation. Secure higher level support.
This is the fallback, but sometimes it's essential. Project managers typically have influence, maybe lots of it, but they rarely have formal authority over a resistor's employment status or their performance review. So if the resistance is critical to project success, if it's chronic, if it's truly intractable, and you've genuinely exhausted all those other influence strategies, then you may need to escalate. Go to the director, the VP, whoever has the formal authority, and make the case for mandating the change.
And how does that usually work?
Often it involves tying the adoption of the new system or the use of the new process directly to the employee's performance metrics, or showing how it aligns with mandatory organizational strategic goals. It shifts from optional to required.
But even then, we have to be mature enough, realistic enough to acknowledge there's an absolute limit, right? You can't force people to change their core beliefs or overcome deep-seated fears sometimes.
Absolutely. That famous anecdote often told of the highly experienced, very competent nurse who chose early retirement rather than learn the new mandatory electronic health record system. It perfectly illustrates that limit.
It wasn't that she couldn't learn it, necessarily.
Probably not. It was that the perceived cost, the stress, the change, the fear of inadequacy maybe outweighed any perceived benefit for her. And sometimes you encounter that and the organization has to decide how to handle it.
That specific example, the nurse retiring, it wasn't just a personnel issue, was it? It sounds like it highlighted a potential failure in capacity planning.
You could argue that. Her retiring represented a massive loss of invaluable institutional knowledge and experience for that hospital. The EHR system itself might have been technically sound, but the human cost of that specific implementation approach was perhaps too high, forcing the hospital leadership, hopefully, to reevaluate their training, their support, their deployment timeline for the rest of the staff.
Which brings us directly to these two really important strategic concepts: change capacity and change saturation. Let's define capacity first.
Okay. Change capacity is essentially the finite ability of a stakeholder group, or maybe the entire organization, to actually absorb and adopt the change effectively. Think of it like the size of the organization's change bucket.
And what affects the size of that bucket?
It's directly affected by factors like their existing workload, how busy are they already, how many other initiatives or projects are hitting them at the same time, and of course, the timing of your specific initiative. Launching a major system during the busiest quarter of the year drastically reduces capacity.
Okay, so capacity is the bucket size. Then what's change saturation?
Change saturation is that critical point where the amount of change being thrown at people, the sheer volume and disruption, exceeds their capacity to cope. The
Yeah.
bucket overflows.
And when that happens, you see symptoms.
Oh, absolutely. Clear, measurable symptoms start appearing. Things like rapid, maybe unexplainable employee turnover,
Mm.
steep declines in productivity that training doesn't seem to fix, increased absenteeism, sick days, and often just a palpable negative morale, a culture of burnout and cynicism.
So as project managers, part of our strategic assessment before we even launch should be,
We must assess if our project's goals and the disruption it will cause align not only with the organization's strategic objectives, but also with the current change capacity and the performance measures of the key stakeholders. We need to ask, are we about to pour more disruption into an already overflowing bucket? That's a critical strategic assessment, not just a technical or scheduling one.
okay, so we've identified the players, we've mapped their power and interest, we've planned our interventions with tools like the SIM, hopefully navigated some resistance, and now we're executing the engagement plan. This moves us into the truly dynamic phases,
Yeah.
continuous execution and relentless monitoring.
Exactly. Managing stakeholder engagement is that active, ongoing phase where we actually follow through on the plan. It means implementing the SE consistently, facilitating the necessary meetings and workshops, working continuously with stakeholders to address their evolving expectations, and crucially, actively logging and resolving new issues as they inevitably arise. Using a systematic issue log is key here. This is the daily grind of influence and relationship management.
The day-to-day work. But you've emphasized that the real strategic differentiator, what separates a good PM from a great one perhaps, is the monitoring stakeholder engagement piece.
I really believe that. This is the continuous, iterative feedback loop that prevents projects from slowly, quietly going off the rails due to shifting political winds. Monitoring is essential because, as we've said, stakeholder interest and influence are not static. They can change, and they usually do change, sometimes rapidly, at any point in the project lifecycle.
So what's the mission of this monitoring? What are we trying to achieve?
The monitoring mission really has several objectives. We need to track changes in sentiment, maybe changes in community awareness, shifts in support levels. We need to identify cause and effect.
Hmm.
Did our specific engagement activity actually lead to that positive shift we saw? We need to adjust our course if the monitoring shows we're drifting off track from our engagement goals. And ultimately, the most important goal is to continuously maintain stakeholder satisfaction to ensure the overall project success.
And what specifically should we be tracking or monitoring?
We need to track adherence to any legal or regulatory obligations related to stakeholders. Monitor progress against the project's stated goals, obviously. Keep an eye on best practices and engagement. But also track specific stakeholder interests. Are their concerns being addressed? And monitor the overall health of the engagement process itself. Are meetings effective? Is communication flowing?
Can we use indicators for this?
Definitely. Indicators are really useful here. For example, you might track the number of project-related complaints escalated to the steering committee each month as an indicator of conflict levels, or track attendance rates at voluntary training sessions as a proxy for user buy-in.
Okay, but we can't just rely on gut feelings or random observations. We need a process for this monitoring, right? The sources mention a robust 5-step monitoring process that helps turn that anecdotal evidence into actionable data.
Yes, having a systematic process is key to making monitoring meaningful. Step 1 is set objectives. Define clear, measurable engagement goals for your monitoring. What do you want to know? And what corresponding data do you need to collect to know it? For instance, if a goal is reducing political friction with Department X, the data needed might be sentiment scores from targeted pulse surveys and tracking the frequency of negative comments in meeting minutes.
Okay, set objectives. Step 2.
Step 2. Plan for monitoring. Once you know your objectives, develop those precise indicators you'll use. Determine the frequency of measurement weekly, per project phase, and critically, assign clear accountability. Who is responsible for collecting this data, analyzing it, and reporting on it?
Plan the work. Step 3.
Step 3. Gather feedback. This is where you collect the data. And remember, it's not just about formal surveys. Those have their place. It includes analyzing structured questions asked consistently at key milestones or meetings. Questions like, on a scale of 1 to 5, how do you feel about the project's progress this month? Or open-ended questions like, what specific features are going well for you right now? What's not going well? What is the one thing you are most worried about regarding this project?
Getting both quantitative and qualitative data.
Exactly. That blend is key. The scores tell you what, The narrative answers often tell you why.
Makes sense. Step 4 sounds critical for making sense of it all. Track everything.
Absolutely critical. Good data management is paramount here. You need a robust, ideally centralized stakeholder register. And honestly, for complex projects, this often needs to be dedicated software, not just a static spreadsheet that quickly becomes outdated.
What should this register track?
It needs to track all significant interactions with stakeholders, recorded sentiments, positive, negative, neutral, documented issues raised and their resolution status, and any observed or assessed changes in their influence or interest levels over time. If a key stakeholder complains once, okay, maybe it's a bad day. If they complain 3 times in 2 weeks about the same issue, that pattern must be visible in the tracking system for analysis.
Track it all. And finally, step 5.
Step 5. Analyze, evaluate, and record. Don't just collect data, use it. Synthesize the information frequently. This involves qualitative analysis looking for recurring themes, keywords, shifts in sentiment in the open-ended feedback. Calculating standardized sentiment scores over time to spot trends, and using visual tools like updating those stakeholder power interest maps. A powerful technique is comparing the map before a major engagement push or a difficult deployment phase to the map after that phase to visually demonstrate whether you've achieved measurable movement toward the desired de-engagement levels you set out in your SEAM analysis.
Show the progress or lack thereof.
Precisely. It holds the engagement strategy accountable.
This systematic monitoring, tracking all this data, it naturally leads us into what you called the next generation of ITPM, the predictive future. It sounds like relying solely on static spreadsheets and maybe quarterly review meetings just isn't going to cut it anymore in dynamic IT environments.
It's really becoming professional negligence in complex projects. Traditional tools give you a snapshot, maybe a photograph, of the historical present or the recent past. Modern predictive solutions aim to provide more of a strategic radar capability.
How so? What makes them predictive?
Increasingly, these are AI-powered tools, often integrated directly with things like the SEAM, the issue log, even communication platforms like email or Slack, with appropriate privacy considerations, of course. They're designed to look for early warning signals.
Subtle pattern.
Exactly. Subtle, often non-obvious patterns that humans might miss in the noise. Things like a sudden slight drop in attendance at optional project update sessions from a specific department, maybe declining response rates to pulse surveys from a key user group, or even a subtle negative shift in the overall tone of email communications related to the project, detected using natural language processing, NLP. The goal is to detect disengagement or rising resistance before it becomes a visible, full-blown crisis.
That's fascinating. So how does that translate into what you termed a 360-degree health view?
The 360-degree view comes from connecting those soft indicators, the analyzed sentiment, the participation quality, the tone of internal chatter, the early warning signals with the hard project data that PMs already track. Budget adherence, schedule performance, task completion rates, defect counts, burn down charts.
So it connects the people data with the project data.
Precisely. This integration aims to tell you not just that stakeholder X is suddenly showing signs of resistance, but potentially why that resistance might be manifesting now. The system might correlate their declining engagement scores with, say, a recently announced delay in a dependent feature they cared about, or a budget cut that impacted their team 3 weeks ago. It connects the dots.
Which then allows for much more targeted interventions.
Yes, this allows for precision interventions. Instead of the PM just broadly saying, uh-oh, we need to do something about resistance brewing in Department B, the analysis might reveal stakeholder Y, who we know is the key informal influencer in Department B, is showing strong resistance signals specifically correlated with discussions around potential role changes post-deployment.
And that insight completely changes the intervention strategy.
Immediately. You realize that offering more generic system training isn't going to solve their underlying fear of job insecurity. The precise intervention becomes maybe organizing a dedicated confidential session for stakeholder Y and their peers with HR and their director to clarify future roles and opportunities. This highly precise tailoring of interventions based on data analysis is the core idea behind predictive stakeholder management. It maximizes the return on the PM's limited influence capital.
And can this scale up?
In very large organizations, yes. These kinds of analytical tools can even help senior management identify portfolio-level trends. They might spot recurring patterns of political resistance or specific types of engagement challenges cropping up across multiple simultaneous projects, which can then inform broader executive decisions about organizational change management capacity or communication strategies.
Wow. Okay, one last point on execution. How does all this apply in agile or adaptive environments? Does it change things?
It definitely intensifies things. In Agile, stakeholder involvement is often more frequent or deeply integrated into the day-to-day or sprint-to-sprint flow. Think about the product owner constantly interacting with stakeholders to refine and prioritize the backlog for each rapid iteration.
So the cycle is compressed.
Exactly. The cycle of identify, analyze, plan, engage, monitor happens much faster, sometimes within a single sprint. This requires even faster decision-making, continuous feedback loops, and engagement tracking systems that can keep up with that high pace. The principles remain the same, but the cadence is much, much quicker. Hashtag outro. So we have covered a significant amount of ground today, haven't we? We've journeyed from the foundational definitions of who a stakeholder even is, all the way through to some pretty sophisticated predictive analytics being used in modern IT project management.
Yeah, quite a journey. To recap the framework, stakeholder management gives us that overall systematic process: identify, analyze, plan, manage, and monitor. While stakeholder engagement is the active part, the personalized collaboration, the continuous interaction.
Perfectly summarized. And those two core strategic tools we spent time on, the ones that really help move you from being just a reactive manager to a proactive leader in this space,
That would be the power interest grid.
which tells you how to prioritize your communication efforts based on who has influence and who cares the most, and the Stakeholder Engagement Assessment Matrix, C.
Which diagnoses and, importantly, quantifies that critical gap between where a stakeholder is currently and where you need them to be, D, for project success.
By mastering these systematic processes, by understanding the tools, and just as importantly, understanding the underlying human psychology of resistance and change capacity, you gain the concepts, KO1, KO3, you build that strategic evaluation capacity, KO2, and you lay the foundations for the critical professional skills, SO1, SO3, needed to manage these complex, high-stakes IT projects successfully.
So ultimately, stakeholder mastery isn't just about knowing which tool to use when. It's really about leadership, isn't it? It's about strategy and fundamentally understanding the human response to the digital change we're often driving.
That's the essence of it. And that understanding, that ability to navigate the human landscape, is often the difference between a project that simply gets deployed technically and a project that actually delivers sustainable, adopted value to the organization and its people.
Well said. Now, if you enjoyed this deep dive, please do check out the description below. We've put links to all the source materials, related resources we discussed. Everything's there.
And please like, follow, share this with colleagues or classmates who might find it useful. It really helps keep the conversation going around effective IT project leadership.
Definitely. And as always, we want to leave you with a reflective question, something to mull over, connecting our theoretical discussion back to your immediate world. Here it is.
If every essential IT project you rely on every single day suddenly failed tomorrow purely because of disengaged or actively resistant stakeholders, think about your online banking system, the software managing the power grid, maybe the university registration portal. What part of your personal or professional world would come crashing down first?
Food for thought. Behind every app launch, every online order, and every single innovation shaping our lives, there's IT project management making it possible. Until next time, keep exploring the fascinating world where ideas become projects and projects shape our future.